If you tell one thing to your kids about this conference that you were attending today, tell her about Leyla. And she's the powerhouse of Berlin fashion. She's one of the most creative people of the city. And if you don't know her designs, Google it. It's really amazing. She's probably the best ambassador Berlin has because she even carries Berlin in the name. It's Lala Berlin. And in order to make sure people know a little bit more about you, you have a little clip for a new hoodie you're going to bring out. And it's a Berlin-inspired clip, I think.
Is it on?
It should be on now.
Wagen rollen in langen Reihen. Magisch leuchtet der blaue Schein. Band mich arabische Zaubermacht. Tageshelle in dunkler Nacht. Hastig huschen Gestalten vorbei. Keine fragt, wer die andere sei. Langsam schlendere ich im Schwarm allein. Magisch leuchtet der blaue Schein. Kaufmann, Werkmann, Student, Soldat, Bettler in Fetzen, Hure im Staat. Wie das rasselt, summt und braust, wie es mir vor den Ohren saust. Jahrmarkt des Lebens, so groß, so klein. Magisch leuchtet der blaue Schein.
So if you're fast in this meeting, we're going to show it again and again and again because it's just very good. The next guest we have is Mr. Brooke Cardin. He's the editorial director of High Snobiety. And if you don't know High Snobiety, it's easy. If you want to get some cool stuff for your kids for Christmas, read his blog. If you buy Lala, fine, but otherwise he's going to be the man to tell you more about it. So meet him after the session. He can tell you everything from sneakers, from street fashion to high fashion, from couture to music to DJs to clubs to Berlin. So welcome, Mr. Cardiner. And on my far left, we have Mr. Stefan Franzke from Berlin Partner, which is really interesting because he's the man whose job, from what I understand it is to bring more people like these to Berlin. And we're going to talk about that and also what he can do for these two to stay Berlin, which is going to be a big question as well. Welcome, guys. So our task today, if I understand it right, is to talk about creativity. And obviously, everybody has different approaches of being creative. Mine is I do a nap, and I pretend that I work while falling asleep and by waking up. And it actually works for me. I come up with questions waking up, and I start typing them and everything. Today, I didn't have time for a nap, so I didn't bring many questions. But let's see, what is your approach? What is creativity to you, and how does it come to you?
Creativity to me is something which is happening inside of you. So whatever you do and you think to create something new, that's creativity and has nothing to do with being a true creative and not creative or call you creative, because kids can be creative. You can be creative if you manage a company. You can be really creative by thinking about different strategies. That can be creative. So this is creation and this is creativity, and this is where it starts for me.
How about you, Brooke?
Well, for us, creativity has very much to do with content because that's mostly what we're producing. So when we're trying to be creative with content, we look a lot at our data as well. Obviously, there's a lot of human intuition involved in being creative, but for us, our creativity is very much sort of backed up by the data that we've collected over the years, that we collect every day through the different tools that we use. But yeah, we use this data to kind of ignite our creativity and to come up with ideas that we think will resonate with our readers, which is, even though we're bigger than ever, it's still a somewhat niche audience. Maybe some people here know it, maybe not. But yeah, so it's quite a niche audience, and we have to be able to speak to them in a way that engages them on the platform and that they can relate to.
I mean, in a way, if time speeds up, and obviously the times have speeded up quite a bit, the impulse it has on creativity is immense. Like, there's so much more influence nowadays than it was like 30, 40 years ago. Like, Warhol had the time to sit in his factory, do amphetamine, and just do 50 different marathons. Nowadays, if you post one online, 500 kids gonna do the same the next day. How did kind of speed change your approach to creativity, for example, in fashion, coming up with ideas? How far do you have to think ahead to stay ahead?
I think you have to get away from that because you have to do your own thing. You shouldn't look too much what the rest of the world is doing to be creative with what you want to do. Otherwise, it's without identity. So if you do it by heart, I think it's always very individual, and this is the most important thing. So even if it's going fast and the other one is coming much faster than you, as an example, we did shoes, and one of the big chains had it like one day before we launched them for a third price. Yeah, what shall I do? I mean, I cannot think about that when I am actually doing it, that other people are going to be much faster than I am. But still, we're going to sell our shoes.
I mean, there's an idea of that, like creativity and cool, for example, travels like the Gulf Stream. So there's kind of like there is a momentum for things like that. So if you come up with a design and other people think of the same design, it's probably because the influences are kind of similar. I mean, you probably experienced that looking at lookbooks all day. I mean, what you guys do is you kind of harvest the new cool shit and decide what's good and what's not good. But it's going always probably in similar directions, right?
Yeah, no, that's 100% right. I mean, being first has always been a big part of what we do, first to break the news. But at the same time, it's also, I think, kind of brought and killed trends and brands and products way faster than it ever has. I think it's reflected as well in the fashion industry. Burberry last summer, I believe, was the first time they offered direct from runway to order. So you could see it on the runway and then right after the show order those products. But at the same time, that trends come and go quicker than ever because it hits a really quick saturation point on social media, large part because of publications like us that kind of add fuel to this fire, but at the same time, it's what people are engaging with, interacting with. So, I mean, there's obviously positive and negatives to it. Probably you feel some of more of the negative aspects because of having to actually produce these products and keep up with the consistent changes.
And I also believe that you have to stop the pace. You have to do your own pace. Otherwise, you're just like a mannequin in this industry. You have to put up new ideas for yourself because I believe this, how fashion for me has been going on within the last 15 years especially, they are just overrolling themselves with ideas and coming up with the next collection and next collection. So there is a time that you have to just get a rest and see what you can do for yourself or for your company or what you think is good or not. So for me, it's more to look into the future and find different ways how I can run the business and be still creative and be happy with what I'm doing instead of just following up with the pace and the industry and whatever is going out with Burberry or whatsoever, Gucci, or I don't know. I mean,
it's also interesting, who do you design for? I mean, you have obviously for example, you design for a digital audience when you want highest notoriety to really hype your sweatshirt. You also want to attract customers to come to your shops and buy the sweatshirts. You also want to, like, in Berlin, people regard this as cool. In Saudi Arabia, they look at other stuff. In Los Angeles, they think, oh, that's last season. I mean, there's so many different approaches to actually looking and deciding what's on or not on. It's very difficult for a designer to really decide what's kind of in the need and in the moment, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, that's totally right. At the same time, a lot of our content also focuses on highlighting cultures that you might not necessarily consider part of this quote-unquote influencer Gulf Stream. Yeah. We put up a street-style set the other day from Almaty in Kazakhstan, and very much they were showing people were wearing the same products and brands there that they wear here in Berlin, in Los Angeles, Milan, Tokyo. I mean, there's of course subtle differences throughout, but mostly because of social media, you see these products and these brands kind of permeating cultures and kind of latching on to whoever the big influencers are in each part of the world.
But in a way, it takes character away also from cities, and I mean that's part of our topic today as well. Is how creativity in Berlin interact, and I mean obviously if someone posts a Supreme sweatshirt that's put on the market on a Thursday, 12 o'clock, Supreme drops, and kids from Berlin to New York to LA to Tokyo to Paris, they all hype about it, and 60 seconds later the shop is sold out. I mean, back in the days, people would go to Paris because there was one sneaker released in Paris. You wouldn't get it in London or anywhere else. It was kind of part of the subculture. And all this kind of vanishes away and withers away because obviously everything is all-time, everywhere online available if you have the right credit card. How do you deal with that, for example, from your point of view, for like a city like Berlin? How do you stay unique and stay a different city, apart from rent and places like this amazing audience here?
So I'm an economic development guy, a little bit other branch that these two. And for us, what means creativity in my profession? We have to find our own DNA here in Berlin to make marketing, for example. So to know what is the success of Berlin nowadays, we have to figure out this, and creativity is really a fundament of the success of Berlin nowadays. Together with the startup ecosystem, we bring this to other cities to showcase what happened here in Berlin. There is a pressure about the pace because everything is online, and for us it's very necessary to figure out our own creativity. For example, in the past, when we run marketing campaign, we have some online marketing campaign. Now we want to have more emotional things to bring it to other people. The last or 2 weeks ago, we celebrate our 50 years anniversary of sister city with Los Angeles, and normally we brought established companies like Siemens, BMW to the
Why
cities.
didn't you bring
No,
Why didn't you bring Lala to LA?
We were there.
I mean, in the end, it's LA.
We
LA.
were there
Lala.
with the movie industry and with street artists from the art house, the Dixons. Yeah, we bring lifestyle from Berlin to other cities to say, okay, we have an established industry. Yeah, this is a backbone. But for the future, to support the creative industry, which is very one of the roots of the success of Berlin, we have to mention this. We have to bring it out.
May I say something? But the roots of this creativity that was starting, I would say, 25 years ago almost, has something to do with the freedom that Berlin had within the last 20 years, but it changed within the last 5 to 10 years. Because again, the overpopulation, the speed in that we're living, and like people come over, we have tons of startups, which I don't mind, but on the other hand, this is like the positive and the negative side, which takes away the creative space for creative people, because people could come over, live for like a low rent, and be happy by 2 currywurst a day and just do their art piece, But once it's getting established, the city, the creativity can go into a direction which is dying, Like people move away again because they don't feel that the creativity, the space of creativity is still as it was like 15 years ago, or affordable.
Yeah, affordable. I mean, it's also a question about affordability.
So
this is a challenge in a successful city. You are absolutely right. There was, after falling down the walls, a lot of space, free space, room for creativity. And this is the fundament of the success which we have now. But when we compare Berlin 12 years ago, we had an unemployment rate about 20%. Now it's 9%. So this is a success. But with the success comes, we have now, when you compare from the Paris perspective or from London, the living costs and the housing costs are affordable. But for the people who know the cost 20 years ago, is this a problem? Because the average of the cost is increasing in the last years 10% or so. And this gives pressure, and the room for creativity is smaller and smaller. And to bring this, or to know that creativity in Berlin was the success and will be the success in the future, I think will open new rooms for the future, which we need.
I mean, in a way, if you're honest about this, I mean, the cool of Berlin should is been defined by people like Norbert from Berghain, who used to. I mean, the Berghain is basically the soul of Berlin cool. It's EasyJet. It's people like you. It's MTV coming to the city pretty early. It's the club culture. It's the openness, low rents, all this. I mean, in a way, from what I understand of what you do with your marketing, I mean, you kind of try to attract people to move from London because of Brexit, from other places in the world to Berlin, because like there's a breeding ground for creativity here. Shouldn't you have a program where you kind of preserve or where you help people who actually are creative here to like stay creative? Because like, I mean, this girl could go anywhere. She could be Lala Copenhagen or Lala Paris. I mean, if rents go up and the creativity is more and more expensive in the city and talent is getting more and more expensive in the city, you have to somehow protect the people who actually make this city what it is now, I think.
You are absolutely right, but I'm not a politician.
I'm just
so
asking.
I have no, I cannot decide to protect the room, but we are doing marketing for that because we integrate. We have a Berlin partner network with more than 300 different actors, and we open this network for the creative industry, for the startups, for the fashion tech, and so on, to show the other people that this is very necessary for us to mix and to collaborate and to see that creativity is very important for the city. And this is what we are showing when we have meetings. And this is why I'm very happy that we could accompany the DLD to Berlin, because this is really a sign how necessary meetings and the talks about design, lifestyle, and so on have an economic impact for a city.
Well, I can only speak about my experience. I'm only here in Berlin for 6 years and 5 at Heisenberg. But yeah, when I started, we were about 6 people in an apartment on Torstraße. Now we're 70 in the Maikita house in Kreuzberg. So, I mean, in a lot of ways, we've been able to kind of harvest and bring in this talent by the city changing and by wages and also as well the cost of living, of course, going up. But there seems to always be this kind of like struggle to keep Berlin this sort of creative, inexpensive haven. But at the same time, it also tends to backfire, I think. We do a lot of work with musicians and celebrities, and we try to do videos and interviews with them. But it's hard to do them in Berlin because this is just a small stop on their press tour or their music tour, whatever it is they're doing. Whereas if we're in New York, where we also have an office, we have 2 weeks to work with whoever we want. And I think until Berlin kind of reaches that next level, that will probably continue to be the case. I mean, you moved here from the West Coast, from LA. What made you move to Berlin? What was your... Well, it was originally, actually, it was an internship that didn't work out because the HR department had no idea what they were doing, and they couldn't get me my visa. But then I found out that Heisenberg was here, which I didn't know. I thought, like most people think, that it's an American publication. But yeah, it's based here in Berlin. We have an office in New York, like I mentioned. But yeah, I stayed here because I realized how much opportunity there actually is for somebody that wants to put in that work and wants to get to know the other creatives in the scene, kind of the other figures. Because, I mean, there's quite a few other people and publications that I think are helping define the Berlin fashion scene. There's 032C, of course. Your Koch, and Tag Agnes, the whole environment around Tag Agnes is... I mean, that's something you should protect as a landmark, for example. Because there's so much happening there, from Galerie König to 032C workshop, and you can see how people kind of go in, out, interact, fuel each other, and it's really important to have these hubs, I guess. Yeah, and I mean, there's also a few brands that I think are helping sort of define, I mean, of course, Lala Berlin, but of course, just in the last year, 2 years, is GmbH. That's kind of made a big impact in the fashion scene. Autolinga, it's a French woman, but she's based here in Berlin. So, I mean, there's clearly opportunities to rise up and kind of define what style means in Berlin. Well, what about, how does it work? Does creativity follow the city, or does creativity make a city? For example, Barcelona used to be the hub in the 90s. Everybody wanted to go there. All agencies went there. Nowadays, they don't even want to be Spanish. And, I mean, New York people 10 years ago would never move to LA. They hated LA. Everybody was, like, too cool to even talk and consider it.
and nowadays LA is the new hub. It seems like artists move there, Hedi Slimane moved there, even Dior kind of moved there for a second. Saint Laurent moved there for a second. How do you feel about that? Like, how does this change? Does it change with people, or does it change by location?
I think it's a change of the city itself, you know, like the more people live in the city, the more busy it gets. Some people, they just don't want to have that anymore. You know, it's the same thing that you feel like you want to live in a countryside when you're all the time between cars and busy people. You know, it's you know, if you're talking about New York and in LA, it's just like easy, sunny.
But he still left. He left 6 years ago.
He was young.
But now he wants to go back. And the traffic jam didn't get any better. It got worse.
It's the nomads that are moving,
Yeah.
right?
I think a lot of that the talents are one of the starting point of a movement, because here in Berlin, since 5 years, we are growing. The city is growing with 50,000 people net per year, and the most are coming from the south of Europe, because there is a really high unemployment rate, and they want to start business, they want to have a family, they want to earn money. And Berlin is open-minded. They have 190 different nationalities here in Berlin. It's like a safe harbor in these days where nationalism is growing. And for these new citizens, they are staying here maybe for the next 5 or 10 years. But the people from the when they come from 25, so 12 years ago, they say, "Oh, this is not my Berlin," because it changed. So for me, it's really driven by people. And when, as I mentioned, I was some weeks ago in downtown LA with the Berlin Lab. Yeah, and people here in New York, in Berlin, ask me, "You can't go with a pop-up lab to downtown," because I was there 4 years ago, and it was not a safe district. But now it's really in and really cool, and people are changing with their businesses, the cities. So in cities have to decide what they want to do, to fix the lifestyle today, that it's the same in the future, or to open the city that the citizens can shape the future too. So, and this is, I think, the discussion.
How do you pitch Berlin? Like, think she's running a fashion house in Belgium, and she's not really happy about Belgium right now. How would you convince her to move to Berlin? Well, what's the pitch? Like, how do you? Well, what's your 3 best arguments? How does it work?
So overall, it's number 1, the talents. Yeah, you find when you need international people, open-minded people, creative people, you find them in Berlin. The whole world is in Berlin. Yeah. Second is you can do money here. Yeah. Nowadays, the people can buy the fashion things. It's not for free, so other people can earn money, because at the end of the day you have to pay some bills, and we have affordable cost. And then it depends on what sector we are talking. We focused here on the fashion scene. But creativity, when we have take the focus on the games industry, for example, a lot of games industry from Korea and China enter the European market via Berlin. And the pitch is that when they need talents from Latin America, yeah, that these kinds of people don't want to go to Asia or to London, for example. They want to go to Berlin because they have here a Latin community. So it depends on the creative industry sector.
But for example, because she's a fashion
and
house,
another pitch is that we help with the business immigration thing to get working and visa permission in 5 days. Yeah, we guaranteed this
Yes,
in
see?
5 days.
Do
yeah?
you do this as well for people who actually have companies here? I mean, who would Leyla, for example, call if she needs this kind of help with an
Yeah,
existing
that's what
company?
he told me actually
Oh, yeah?
before.
Yeah. Okay,
and
good.
if I had known this, but it's starting next year, you
Yes.
That's
said.
good, that's good, that's
so
good.
that's too late
That's
for
good.
me. Livia, we're without this guy, I'm sorry.
But for example, talk Berlin fashion. I mean, everybody raves about it. Jörg Koch does an amazing magazine. These guys do an amazing online site for it. She does amazing fashion. Yet Berlin Fashion Week kind of withers away in a way. Like it never fulfilled, apart from German media, what it really was meant to do, from my perspective. How can that? Why? What happens there? What do you think? Why does it never? You go to Copenhagen now because it's the cool kids there.
It's hard to say, to be honest, because I think it's a little baby still in comparison to all the other cities that has been doing these fashion weeks for a long time. And compared to Copenhagen, for example, they have been having a very good council that was working hard for the Danish fashion to become or to get where they are. Mm-hmm. So they were very well organized and professional in the whole setting with the fashion shows and what they do. And I think what the Danish, I just can't compare the Danish to Germans, would make the difference is that they concentrate on their market. And it's not all about getting all the internationals to Berlin Fashion Week, because if you look outside, I mean, there is Paris, and this has been there forever. There is Milan, and this has been there forever. And then they came New York and London, or London and New York, and all the others are like the local markets. And if you take that as granted that it's first for your local market, and then if you're lucky you can get over to Europe and then international, then you can build it up in a different way. I think it's a wrong perspective to do something in competition with already really well established labels, brands, or whatsoever you want to call it, and then expect that the international scene is just like coming, especially when you're talking about a fashion week where you are presenting fashion shows. It's not a label. It's not like a shoe that you're bringing out of Germany, or it's not like a very well done magazine. Yeah. It's a fashion week, so there are collections that have been showed, and people would work 6 months for a collection to show it somewhere. So, and it's also, again, you know, like we grow so much, and everybody can do everything all over the world, and there are upcoming fashion weeks all over the world. So I think it's the concentration of what is important for what you're doing and not. But hopefully we also have the German Fashion Council now since 2 or 3 years. Yeah. So maybe they can make a change and turn it into a better.
Totally.
I mean, I think London Fashion Week, at least for men's, is a good case study for how to turn it around. Because I think about 4 or 5 years ago, London Fashion Week for men, it basically just didn't matter. And then they convinced some of their better sort of homegrown designers, these London-based designers, to showcase there. J.W. Anderson, Craig Green, a few others. And now it's as relevant for people that are into fashion as Paris or Milan is. And same thing with New York. New York was kind of lagging behind all the other cities, and they brought Raf Simons over, part of Calvin Klein, but also his own label. And now that's also a big deal in the fashion world, at least for men.
So it's about talent and not about the city.
Exactly. I think it's about kind of having a few people that define it, that bring people that want to I think she's disagreeing, but that want to convince themselves to come over, and then from there you kind of build up. So it's, I guess in a way it's kind of baby steps, but at the same time it's also getting that initial talent push and then bringing the rest on board.
So what's the worst that can happen to creativity in Berlin? Rents? What is the most endangering thing? What do you guys think?
I mean, I would think to be able to continue to give more opportunities, whether that's through connections or having more talent and being able to potentially pay higher salaries that these kind of top-level talent demand. I mean, that's happened in Heisnabeide. I've seen it grow to what it is now. I was there for most of the ride. But I've also seen it where it kind of just stagnates and stands still and kind of withers away. So I think it's about how you can develop past the sort of local community. And I guess we're fortunate that we're an international publication, so we're able to write about trends from around the world, and actually our biggest market is the US. But I think, yeah, opportunity is probably the biggest thing to keep talent here.
What do you think? What's the biggest danger to your marketing plan for Berlin?
For the marketing plan for Berlin is that we bring all the things which are in the which begins 25 years ago after falling down the wall to bring the signal that this is a safe harbor for people, for creativity outside, and not only to show that Berlin is like a typical German city, but Berlin is a vibrant city with different themes of creativity. This is our marketing plan for the future.
Even a DLD now. So.
Yeah. Yeah, of course. Yeah, and we partnered with DLD. It's one example. We had an opening in New York last or 2 years ago, together with the DLD, to partner with really to partner and to show and to use this showcase to bring a part of Berlin to abroad. And now we are here in Berlin. We are very proud that we find here this cool location, and to have the right mix, that to show that we have old-fashioned industry and we have a new industry, and to bring this together and to have it in affordable and in a lovely way here in Berlin. This is our claims to bring it to abroad.
And I think because we have almost 3 minutes left, I think the best way to use those 3 minutes is to show Leyla's video again, to make sure everybody in the audience understands what we talk about today. And so please have a last look. We won't.
He does. He's a very kind guy.
Steffi does that. That's Steffi's
Steffi,
job.
you do.
Steffi, you do that.
Come over and dance on the table, please.
You're the disco girl. You're the disco girl, Steffi.
So
yeah.
who's the greatest dancer in here? Nobody?
What about the film? Can we see the film, please? The video.
I think the tech people, they don't dance and know how to move on with the movie.
They want the hoodie. Everybody wants the hoodie.
What goodie?
Hoodie.
The hoodie.
They want the hoodie.
I thought the goodie.
No. The hoodie is the goodie. Can we get the video again?
You got some goodies.
What is the best band right now in Berlin?
Good question.
I think Young Horn.
Wagen rollen in langen Reihen. Magisch leuchtet der blaue Schein. Band mich arabische Zaubermacht. Tagesschwelle in dunkler Nacht. Hastig huschen Gestalten vorbei. Keine fragt, wer die andere sei. Langsam schlender ich im Schwarm allein. Magisch leuchtet der blaue Schein. Kaufmann, Werkmann, Student, Soldat, Bettler in Fetzen, Hure im Staat. Wie das rasselt, summt und braust, wie es mir vor den Ohren saust. Jammert des Lebens, so groß, so klein. Magisch leuchtet der blaue Schein.
Thank you, guys.